Once that's put together in July I think would be you need to do the major planning portion of it, figure out budget, experts that you may need and want to get in contact with, and really get a blueprint of where you're going so that it can be set in motion so that if you come together in August, you can start working on what's already brought back before you from the prior meeting. There was Linda Pisner from the AG's office and this commission said that there was some interest in having a public hearing, at least one, on the groundwater issue. And again, this is completely separate from the commission's regular work. But we could talk about the funding and what's available for that as we move along here.
How many meetings are they planning on having? Do you know, Chris?
I do not know at this point. I don't know. And I move forward under the assumption that once a month, but it may be less than that. Depends on what plan you move forward with, the experts you need, logistical things.
And their deadline to report is January something?
Yep. It's actually going to be the Water Resource Planning Committee that will be the one its name will be on the document because they are the lead agency under the resolve.
And Curtis, who is the analyst that will be helping?
As far as I know, the water planning, I don't know if there's anyone who will be helping with that. I don't know what their staffing is like. It's really going to be in the AG's office. I'm not sure, again, what staffing they would provide. Right now that's a question that's out there. I mean, the commission has OPLA at this point, but I don't know how much. It depends on what you want to do with this. How much you're looking for us, how much you're looking for outside experts, how much you're looking from OPLA to provide the staffing. And of course, there's going to be areas where we'll have no expertise in many of these areas, and depending on whether you want, how you want to proceed with it, whether you want me to look into more of an area or have an outside expert that can address that. Well, right now that issue has not been resolved. I mean, that staffing.
Right. And that's something that we'll need to talk about when we all meet, because I think that's a really critical issue. And since you aren't even supposed to really be staffing us at this point, I'm very sensitive to your time. Thank you.
So looking at the schedule again, you can see August is just if you need a work session, that's available. September would be probably a time for a public hearing potentially at that point, because I was assuming you might have more things to talk about at that point once you've gone through the process a little bit more. And then in October, November is when you have to start finalizing things, trying to get the report drafted so it can be drafted and printed, drafted and finalized by all the groups involved, approved, and then printed for distribution. So it's actually a fairly tight schedule. It's a pretty good project. So getting started sooner than later is better. But I think that outline will suffice if we can sort of hit the milestones on that or the markers on that. Below that, the draft report outline. Again, this is what the report may look like in the areas it may cover. Starting forward, of course, the implementing language. Then the background, and I put in brackets next to it what entity would be involved, which one of the groups would take lead on this, any experts that may be needed. And again, this may be something that's for July when the three groups can get together is probably more appropriate, but I wanted to bring this to the committee, or Representative Rotunda and the chairs wanted to bring this to the committee now to get you thinking about this and something to have an idea or grasp of what this may entail. But under the background, do a history on groundwater extraction and companies involved in groundwater extraction currently and that have been in the past. And the point of that is to see if there are companies that have foreign investors here in the state already on groundwater, which we know that there are some already. But that'll give sort of a background in what we're looking at, what you would be looking at in general. Domestic legal context, look at the common law doctrines now that are used in the state regarding absolute dominion or reasonable use rules, whether the owner has absolute dominion over the groundwater or just reasonable use. Current regulatory framework, again, so this is just getting the legal aspects out there. What's current law now? What is required for folks to take water out of the ground now, regulatorily wise, permits and that sort of thing. And also look at what agreements are in effect at this point that may impact Maine's ability to regulate groundwater or to take groundwater out for commercial purposes. And those are trade and goods, trade and services, NAFTA's Chapter 11 investment. And then D, what could possibly may trigger a complaint or a trade complaint, and changes in legislation, changes in administrative procedure, and border issues. Those are all things that could be looked at under the background. portion of the report. Again, this is just a very broad outline. I'm not getting into any of the details. As you all know, that this is, any one of these is a fairly complex issue. And so this is just a broad outline at this point. And you may decide not to do some of these or focus more on a couple areas as opposed to doing all of these. Two, you can potentially look at the U.S. trade commitments impacting water, provisions on groundwater as a good, as a service, and how they may apply to that. And I've gone through and listed some of these that may apply, GATT and GATS, other World Trade Organization services. So this is sort of looking at existing trade commitments that are already out there. Then a section on looking what's being currently negotiated out there that may have an impact on trade agreement or on groundwater extraction. And I list that's number 3, and I'll go through and list a number of those as well. For actions that might be taken or that states might take to enhance their ability to avoid or withstand a challenge, and that's looking at legislative approaches, informed consent, transparency and investment, that companies are investing in the state so that people may have a better handle on what's actually here already. Use of waivers, which is an interesting idea, to have companies that come in and want to extract water from the state to waive their ability to sue under trade laws and foreign tribunal or and World Trade Organization tribunals.
Curtis, can I stop you there? Mm-hmm. How much do you, how do you know something like that, use of waivers? I mean, can the state enact such a law like that?
It wouldn't be so much as enacting that. There's two things. One, the state can require that if you're going to go into an agreement, that they have to waive their ability to go to these tribunals. That's a contractual issue, and I don't see a reason why that couldn't be done as part of getting your permit to remove groundwater, to take out groundwater. At this point in the game, I haven't looked into it that closely, mm-hmm. but there's nothing that on its face that strikes me as mm-hmm. having a constitutional issue.
Okay.
Or a federal issue.
Well, that's what I was more wondering about, if feds would.
Yeah, but it may, and these are things that you need to look into, as part of this mm-hmm. groundwater examination, will need to be fleshed out a little bit more. Along that same vein as requirements from contracts or from these companies that are going to come in and want to remove water for commercial purposes, exclusive jurisdiction, that Maine state courts is where they'll need to just have resolve any disputes under the contract that they enter into or permit. Maine could include a choice of form. Again, this is the same sort of thing. So it's not going to a tribunal, so it will be tried under state laws or federal laws and not something that's done in an international trade agreement. That's something to look into as well, as maybe the state could look at, require or encourage. Advocacy at the state or the federal level is another area that could be looked into, that should be or may be looked at. And advocacy at the federal level regarding proposed commitments. So those are more things to chew on. And 5, as a possible sidebar, issues that are identified or information that comes in under the report that's been outlined above, you may be able to apply that to the regulation of LNG facilities. I don't know if you want to go that far, but you may be able to, in the report, the groups may be able to say, and this may apply to LNG facilities, and this would be how, and this is something that should be looked at. I don't know if it would go, if the enabling legislation would go as far, you could stretch it as far as to say to put enacting, submit legislation that would change how that's done, but if the groups feel strongly about headed that direction, that's a possibility. And then finally, the final provision obviously is the conclusions, recommendations, and findings. Any legislation that would need to be drafted would fall under that. And again, I have it there just to figure out who will be doing that of the group, the 3 of the people who are involved or the groups that are involved. And that's sort of the rough outline of what may be in that groundwater examination. There may be more, there may be less, but at least it's in front of this commission now. And again, I think it's going to have to be something, and that's up to the chairs in the commission, but they'll have to be done in conjunction with the other 2 groups as well. And again, the AG's office and the Water Planning Committee, Bob Marvini, is not entirely unfamiliar with the things that are listed here. They have talked about it and reviewed it.